Man, look at this. This delightful dish. These right here are oxtails. And I tell you what, if you want to try something that is just magnificent and super tender, man, the flavor is unbelievable. Give this dish a try. You will not regret it. These are delightful. Hello, welcome back to Texas Cooking Today. On this episode of Texas Cooking Today, we're going to be making a wonderful, exciting dish. This is called braised oxtails. Wonderful tasting. Now, oxtails, what that really is, that's just a cow's tail, okay? It's not necessarily just an ox that it's from. It used to be in the past. This is a peasant dish. However, it's got flavors that are staggering. And that's the reason the oxtail has made a comeback right now. They're making oxtail soup, they're making braised oxtails, all in these wonderful upscale restaurants. And so it has driven up the price of these. However, it's something that anybody should try at least once. So, come over this way. Let me show you all the wonderful ingredients that we have to make braised oxtails. You're going to love this one. Alright, now let's go over our ingredients that we're going to be using for this fabulous dish referred to as braised oxtails. Now, first of all, I want to mention the method of cooking called braising. Braising, so you know right up front, is cooking in liquid at a low temperature. Okay, that's what braising is. So if you got a crock pot and you cook in that, well, believe it or not, that's actually braising. If you put it on the stove and you simmer it, that's not braising. That would be stewing, okay? There's a little bit of difference. You don't want all the bubbling going on inside. You just want it to slowly change and become this harmonious, mellow flavor. So we have our oxtails here. I have 3 pounds of oxtails. I have a couple of medium-sized onions, 4 carrots. I have back here 16 ounces of diced tomatoes in their own juice, 8 ounces of tomato paste, some salt, garlic, bay, and we're also going to need some wine. And for this dish we want a heavy wine, something dark. And so I have chosen this Merlot. It is nice and sweet and fruity, and it will work wonderful in this dish. Now also, you can do this exact same dish with beer. You're going to need a couple, 2 or 3 bottles for that, to do that well. And I recommend a deep dark beer for that also. The same way you're going to use a red wine, you would use a dark beer. So both ways work good for this. Now let's move right into what we need to do to get everything prepared for oxtails braised. Well, it is time that we go ahead and work our vegetables real quick. And what I'm going to want to do is to remove some of that harsh, dry outer layer on this carrots. So I'm going to peel those. I'm just going to use a simple vegetable peeler. And on these onions, I have a bad spot on one, and I'm going to take the stem end off of these. Now, when you're processing an onion and you're cutting ends off, do not cut that root end. That's the end it's going to weep the majority of its juices from. So don't cut the root end until it's absolutely necessary to processing that onion. Now I'm going to cut off that bad spot. See if it comes a little deeper. There we go. Same thing on this. Beautiful. Now, if you don't have red onions, you can use yellow or white. It doesn't really matter. It's not a big deal on this dish. The thing about braising, it's going to cook these vegetables down to a very, very soft state because it's such a long cooking time. But that's also one of the things that's really liked about this. Let me get at this real quick. You know, this morning as I was setting up for this show, I had a guy, scam artist, that called me on the phone telling me he was from Microsoft. Anybody ever calls you like that? Sit there and play with them and jack around with them for a while, but don't give them any information. Thing of it is if Microsoft wants to contact you, they don't use the phone, all right? They're Microsoft, okay? They're a computer company. They do things online. So it's just insane that folks actually fall for that, but they do. And a lot of people get bilked because they're just ignorant about the fact that this is going on. So please be cautious. And I shot a video on that. I don't know if I'm putting it online or not, but I might. And if I did, for goodness sake, check that out. Okay, I've gotten the vegetables ready to that point, and earlier I took the paper off the outside of the onions, making sure I removed any thin layers that I saw there. Removing that paper, you've heard of all these different ways of doing it. Did you see what I just did? It's not that hard. Put it between your fingers, but it keeps slipping out, on both hands, and just give it a gentle rocking squeeze like this. And what that does is that just breaks the paper loose from the outside of the clove. Once that happens, it comes right off. Now we have a lot of oxtails that we're braising here, so I'm going to want about 5 cloves of garlic. Heck, I might even throw in 6 just for fun. When it cooks down this long, things like garlic become really mild. They become a background flavor that mixes in well with everything else. There we go. Now, processing this garlic, let's also remove that scab on the end. Some people don't bother, but I just don't like that in my food. I think it's kind of unsightly. Even though these are going to get cooked down so much, if somebody saw that in one of my dishes, I would be really, really embarrassed, okay? So we've about got everything ready except for just doing a little bit of simple slicing. I'm going to slice my carrots. Simple rounds. Longer pieces where it's narrow. Remember, when you're doing cutting like this, just like you see me doing here, you see me curve my fingers under on the bottom down here. And this part of the knuckle straight up and down. That's the guide for my knife. Okay? You see my thumb is always behind my fingers, and it's on this to control it. When I get back here, I put it behind it to keep it from moving as I move my hand back. And see, as I move my hand back, that becomes my cutting guide, you see? Now, choke up on that knife, pinch the blade between your thumb and forefinger. And in time, don't worry about the speed, in time you'll get to where you cut good and fast this way. And if some of these pieces are uneven, let's not lose any sleep over it, okay? Now, right on to the next thing. Pull that garlic aside because we're going to smash it in just a minute. Our onions. To cut these down, and let me show you a neat way of doing this that you can make some simple slices and it'll come out really nice, okay? First, let's remove that root, like I told you not to do earlier, because the minute you do, boy, it really starts putting out juice from this end. I'm going to take this and half it. Now for this dish, I just want some simple slices. So laying it on that flat side so it doesn't roll around on you, I can cut my slices nice and easy. Isn't that simple? You don't need any kind of fancy cutting for a dish that's going to be braised like this. Anything that's braised or stewed is going to cook down so much that generally things don't hold their shapes. The carrot will, but these onions are just going to turn into mush later, so you don't have to worry about them or what they look like. Now that garlic, I simply want it to release its flavor and it'll cook down on its own, so I don't have to slice it. So I'm just going to mash each one of those with the side of my knife blade. Very simple. Alright, there's the garlic, it's ready to go. Now, get everything in a bowl, and we're going to be off and cooking. Isn't that simple? Now, it is time for us to go ahead and get started preparing this dish. We've done all of our prep work. The vegetables are all cut up. We have our tomato paste, our diced tomatoes, salt, and wine and bay leaf are all ready. So everything here is ready to go together. Remember, we do the setup method on Texas Cooking Today. That means everything is set up beforehand before any cooking starts. That way you can focus on the cooking and not on the cutting and other work distracting you from the cooking. Now, we have these beautiful tails. Now what this is these are just the individual segments of the tail, which is an extension actually off of the spinal column of the animal. So what we've done is we've taken those and they separate them into their individual segments. The bigger ones, of course, near the base of the tail, the smaller ones near the tip. These have a lot of gelatinous material in them, okay, and they do not cook down quickly or easily. You can put them in a pressure cooker, but frankly, I think better flavors still come from that long cooking because you get the release from the bone, the flavors from the bone, as well as the gelatinous material in there. The flavors come out better and it gives the meat time to tenderize the way it should. When this is finished, these are going to be remarkably tender and super flavorful. Now what I have to do is I have a couple of pans here and I'm just now putting some heat under them. And I want to bring these up to temperature so I can do a sear. And I want to show you the temperature that you're going to need on a sear. And we're going to use what I call the water test method, and that's where we put water in the pan. If that water sizzles off and evaporates quickly, that pan is not hot enough. If you put water in that pan and it does sizzle or it just dances in there, kind of rolls around and turns into a ball and it does not sizzle off quickly, well then that pan has become very, very hot. The reason the water acts that way, the reason it dances around, is it forms a vapor barrier between the droplet of water and the extremely hot surface below. So, there's you a little bit of tip and a little technique there. Now that rear burner where I have a small pan, and the reason I have two pans out here heating, this is important. The one pan would certainly hold all of those oxtails, yes. However, it's going to be crowded. And I don't want overcrowding or a steaming condition to occur in my pan. What I want to have happen on these pans is for a searing action to occur. I want to sear the outside of that meat. At the same time, some of the juices are going to be exuded from it, from the fat as well as from the red meat, and those juices are going to caramelize on the bottom of the pan. The caramelization that we get on both of these pans is then going to be broken free with our wine. We're going to deglaze it with the wine, and that adds flavor to the whole dish. So this is a very, very important component, what I'm doing right here. Here's our water test. Now you see how that cooked off quickly? That pan is not hot enough, okay? So it has to heat some more. We'll test that back pan. Okay, the back pan starting to form those droplets that dance around in there, see? So that pan has actually become hot enough for me. Not a surprise, it's a much smaller pan. Now as I get after this is about to turn into a real loud sizzling noise that'll take over the microphone. So I'll try to remember to keep my mouth shut. Make sure your meat is good and dry when you do this. If not, it's going to have a tendency to form that steaming condition and you won't get the kind of caramelization that you're needing. As I said, noisy. So the pan is up in temperature. delicious cooking right there. When you first put these in, they're going to stick, but once they sear enough, they'll release. go. Put that wine in there. That deglazes the bottom. It'll also deglaze some of that meat where it caramelized. Now, we're beginning this wonderful dish. So, let me get this pan out of our way. We just have to add our other ingredients. This is going to be wonderful. Go ahead and throw some of these carrots down in here. Get my onion in there. And these onions, I'm going to break them apart a little bit. They don't have to be perfectly broken apart. But, you know, something to help them release their flavor and to cook down well would be nice. There we go. Simple enough, isn't it? Remember, again, braising is cooking in liquid. And all of this is going to cook down into this most magnificent flavor. Now, where I have this root portion here, I'm not even going to bother with it, okay? I'm going to peel off some of those layers and just toss it. And there's the rest of it. Pour in my tomatoes. The red wine. Yes, you're right. That was a whole bottle. We're also going to need some hot water to put in this as well. Now my tomato paste. Just put it right on top there. Don't worry, all these things are going to get mixed in together. Now, for the water. Alright, now I have gone ahead and put in some water, a quart of water there, and I put in a bay leaf, we got it here, about 3 teaspoons of salt. Our tomatoes are in there, the tomato paste is in there. I just kind of mixed it down a little bit like so, worked it in gently. All the vegetables are there. We're ready to go on this. So we've thrown everything into one pot. It's now covered with, completely covered in liquid. 1 full bottle of wine, 1 quart of hot water. Now this guy needs to go down in the oven. Okay, braising 101. Braised oxtails. That's a heavy pan. I'm gonna move that. There we go. Well, there you have it. Simple way of cooking, braising. Now, all it is just a matter of waiting. We have to wait and wait and wait and wait. And when the meat has started to protrude, or the bone rather is protruding from the meat, you know the way ribs look like when they're cooked, and that bone sticks out a little bit. When the meat peels back gently and it's very tender and soft, this is ready. This is going to be about 4, maybe 5 hours worth of cooking, okay? If it gets done sooner than that, well, you just got lucky or you had some really small oxtails, okay? Let's get on with this. Now, what do I have to do? A little cleaning and waiting. We are here now at 3-hour mark. Now I uncovered this at about 1 hour, and that was just to allow some of this liquid to evaporate out. And later on I'm going to take the liquid and pour it off of this, and then we're going to just simmer it down until it's a beautiful gravy. Now these oxtails are looking really nice, but they're still quite firm. The onions are still slightly firm. This hasn't come up quite to the full temperature of the oven yet. It's right about 200 degrees in this pot. Now, this is all looking real good. However, this is far from what we need. So, I just need to leave this in the oven, let it keep cooking. It's going to take hours more, so I'm looking probably at another 2 to 3 hours on just this. We'll see. It'll depend on when those oxtails get tender. I have just now pulled this out of the oven after 5 hours of cooking now. And is it ready? Oh, I bet it's not. We're going to take a look just to find out. Now, there's one of our oxtails. I'm seeing the bone sticking out past the meat somewhat now. Let's see here. The meat is starting to break apart. I just tasted that, but it's still a little bit tough still, which means it's getting there, but it's not there yet. So we're going to give this another hour. I'll be checking it every hour on the hour now, because this is where the magic is happening, right here. Now remember, braising is slow. Braising is lower temperature. Don't get in a rush with this. Don't turn up the heat. Just let it do its thing. The only way you're going to develop the kind of flavors that braising develops is to keep it slow. Well, here we are near the end of our cook, and I wanted to show you this. Pull these oxtails out. They've gotten really quite tender. The bones have protruded from the meat quite well. So what I'm going to do is just work them out of this braising liquid, each and every one. And we'll set it aside over here. I want to take this liquid that I've braised these in, and we're going to turn that into a most wonderful gravy. See, look, that meat's just starting to fall off of it. That's exactly what we were looking for. The meat becoming extraordinarily tender. Now, total cooking time on this batch, and of course this varies, but this particular batch was 6.5 hours, which is a pretty long cook. And it just depends on the oxtails that you get and the conditions. But as a general rule, braising is, like I said before, something that just has to be done slowly. The only way that we can get the flavors that are present in what we have here was to spend that entire 6.5 hours. There we go. There's another one. Part of that broke off. I just made a mess. Well, you know, sometimes in the kitchen, that happens. We make sacrifices in life. Now, I'm going to take this pot and pour it right over here into this other one. And what I'm looking to do is to simply separate my juices from my vegetables. I'm hoping my colander's large enough. This should do the trick, just barely. There we go. Now what I want to do is to place that liquid back into this large pan, and I want you to turn that into a most wonderful gravy. And one thing's for sure, I will have more than enough gravy using all of that. I certainly don't have to use all of it. I can leave some aside to have a wonderful pot liquor. I could make a wonderful oxtail soup with that. Now this, I'm going to put a flame under it and bring this up to a boil. Now, as I'm waiting for that to come to a boil, what I'm going to be doing here is I have in this cup 1/3 of a cup of flour right down in the bottom there. And this is just a standard bar shaker. Let me take that back a little. And I'm going to pour in some cold water. Now never pour in hot water. You always want to use only cold. If you pour hot water onto flour and then shake it, it will explode on you. So do not do that. Okay, now as this comes up to a boil, then we're going to put our flour and water mixture down into that and use it as a thickener. Our mixture, our pot liquor, has now come up to a boil. So I'm going to go ahead and pour some water down into this shaker. I don't need a lot, about a cup will do. Put the lid on tight, give it a shake. Get this lid ready here. Now, I have this all mixed up. I just need to pour some in. Give this a bit of a stir. Add a little bit more. This, as you can see, is already starting to thicken up. And the rest. And what I have here is a magnificent gravy. This is the kind of stuff that you want to coat your meat with. This is where true flavor is born. I'm going to taste this. Delicious. Sweet, full-bodied. Oh man, that is absolutely scrumptious right there. So I'm going to let this boil for just a little bit, and the idea there is I'm going to let it simmer so that the flavor of that flour gets cooked off. We don't want any raw flour flavor in this. So about 5 minutes of simple simmering. So we're still simmering this. This has been about 4 minutes now. And I'm giving it an occasional stir. Down here we have these absolutely beautiful oxtails. Those came out just perfect. The meat is absolutely falling off the bone. It's extremely tender. It's everything that an oxtail should be. Oh well, look at that. That is absolutely magnificent. There's just nothing like oxtails. They're delicate in flavor and so very delicate when you eat them. The meat just pulls apart. Oh, let me explain. There's a sweet note in the meat from the wine, the carrot, and the onion. You can taste all three. Just this harmonious blend in flavor. And it's penetrated that meat. Plus the beefy flavor mixed with it. This is hard to beat. Fantastic food from simple, humble roots. Give this recipe a try and you're not going to regret it at all. And you won't be able to resist eating it. I'll tell you that. That's good. Well, I'd like to thank you very much for watching Texas Cooking Today. To my subscribers, thank you. Thank you very much. And if you haven't subscribed, well, what are you waiting for? Got a lot of great shows on here. Excellent recipes. You folks have a good day. Thank you for watching Texas Cooking Today, the show where you can get great recipes and the best techniques are taught. Please subscribe to Texas Cooking Today, where you will always find something hot and ready to eat.